So, well, this is exciting to hear about your show that's coming up in Tallahassee. Is it the first one you've been doing, or have you been doing shows for a while now?
I have had maybe a couple gigs in the last 15 months that have been in front of proper audience. But this one's the first, I would say this one's really the first one back. The other ones were, the first one after a long time, but still nothing. And This is the first one back in front of live audience. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's exciting. And
but I've been performing a lot though, just all on pre-recorded live stream stuff. And that's not for me.
Yeah. It's cool for a minute, but then you realize it's just not the same, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good to be in front of people. So you're working on some new material as well. What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah. Well, as everyone who listens to my interviews knows, that opera, classical, and rock and roll and funk are such an integral part of my musical journey, not just jazz, And if there's a way, and I've always said as a kid, if there's a way to do it that isn't sacrificing the integrity of any of these genres, but actually enhancing the experience of the listener and the performers, then that's what I want to do. That may mean kind of a mix up of the styles and flavors. Like, it's like the difference between like a dish where the flavors are all mixed up and it's all a new flavor.
Right.
Or it's the difference between that and a dish where the flavors you can easily pick them out individually.
Right.
And I do all of it. So I do that and I do the other way. And it's just become it's grown into something really nice through the COVID quarantine, that I've developed this new show, and that it's more me than I've ever been on stage.
Very cool. Well, I'm an old guy, and I remember back in the 60s when we listened to transistor radio and you could hear the Beatles and then James Brown and then Johnny Cash all on the same channel back to back to back. It was awesome. And you didn't know you were listening to different stuff.
Yeah, that's what I want for the listeners too. And that way also what I'm doing is also educating, not just like educating people on more of who I am, but also educating people of other genres that they may not have figured that they would have liked. Like young people will like the Queen song, but then not know that that's actually like a jazz sound, and they like it, or the other way around too.
Yep. So we should talk about This Bitter Earth, your most recent album. You're 27, from what I understand. You've been recording since you were 9, so you're an old hand, so to speak.
Always learning something new, though.
I bet. And my understanding is, I think I read somewhere that you kind of consider the songs a song cycle. Is that correct?
I never called it a song cycle, but maybe I think
somebody else did.
some of the label likes to use that, and some people like to use that because for some people I just wanted to record some good songs that all have I always tell a story, a narrative, no matter what I do, if it's a musical or a song cycle or just a collection of tunes, there's always a narrative. Right.
Okay. And it begins with an old Clyde Otis tune called This Bitter Earth, the title track of the album. If I'm not mistaken, that was done by Dinah Washington back in the day. So when you take on a song like that a lot of people will be familiar with, how do you make it your own?
This bitter earth can be so cold. Today you're young, too soon you're old.
Well, actually, surprisingly, not a lot of people are familiar with that tune. That's one of her lesser known recordings, really. But it's because it's more of like a poetry piece. That lyric is a poem,
Yeah.
But with any tune like that or a jazz standard, sometimes I approach these, like the other songs on the record, you've got to be carefully taught and getting to know you. He hit me even, like, there are songs that I the approach is to do them differently, arrangement speaking, musically speaking. There's some approach like that. And then there's some where I feel like it's untouchable. You have to do it as is, like I do Someone to Watch Over Me, just like as if I was a singer in the 1930s singing it.
Yeah.
I just think that no matter what approach that, I've just been singing this such a long time and learning so much through the years, and and listening so much. That's where the real learning is. You know, you got to listen with people. You got to talk about your favorite artists and recordings and why and they work and what about them works, and talk about how the band plays together and the arrangements. And through that, I mean, you kind of just, after diving into different phases, like my Dinah Washington phase, my Anita O'Day phase, the Ella Fitzgerald phase, and then move on to Nina Simone, and then with rock and roll, whatever phases they may be, all of that compiled together through the years, you know, you kind of develop your own sound automatically.
Right.
And same thing with when you ask, how do you do your own thing with it? That kind of just organically happens through all the things I'm saying.
Very cool. All righty. So the album was recorded in 2019, is that right?
Yeah, before any awareness of this world that we were about to enter. But I knew, I mean, we were all, you know, feeling strange things and dark things at that time, whether it's, you know, that's not necessarily politically. I don't mean politically. I just mean just there seemed to be a resurgence of just darkness. You heard it in mainstream culture too, the music, media. I mean, the songs you listen to on the radio nowadays are just so lethargic and emo and sad. So I wanted to kind of give my response to all of this.
Mm-hmm. And what were the sessions like then? Where did you record? Was it in?
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was back in my last chapter. I would definitely say I've turned the new page to a new chapter in life. That was back my last chapter where I was working with a different team of people. I was performing, literally working myself to the bone, almost 300 days of the year. I was on the road, and I had to like do stuff like record an album the morning and afternoon, and then right after the day, 8-hour day is done, head to a gig that night.
Right.
So, you know, I was really tired of that, you know.
Right.
So the session, but when I'm in a recording session, I mean, that's like, I mean, it's like the difference between a stage actor and a film actor. When you're in the recording session, I mean, you can take 2 takes all the way through, but there's a lot of like cut, take camera 2, this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so I actually enjoy kind of taking more of, I mean, my first job is to sing these songs, but I like to be a part of the production process as well. And I feel like Dr. Frankenstein, you know, and I love being in the studio so much.
Very cool. So when you're singing, when you're doing your take, are you kind of in the studio alone? Do you have somebody who's kind of quote unquote directing you and producing you?
Oh, no, we have the whole band does it. I mean, we do it live.
Right.
Pop records are done like they record the drums first and then the bass parts and the guitars and the pianos and the synths. They do it all layered. But you know, particularly with jazz or funk numbers, I mean, it depends on the genre, but most of This Bitter Earth was done live. I mean, that's actually all of it was done live, even the strings. I mean, on This Bitter Earth, that was recorded live. The strings on Getting to Know You, Carefully Taught, and a couple other songs, those were done, like we recorded the strings after the core band live. Yeah.
Cool. Now you have a couple of interesting choices of songs that could be somewhat controversial and were written in a certain place and time, and can be one of them being How Lovely to Be a Woman, which I think it came from Bye Bye Birdie and was originally sung by Anne Margaret, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
How lovely to be a woman. The wait was well worthwhile. How lovely to wear mascara and smile, a woman smile. How lovely to have a figure that is round instead of flat. Whenever you hear boys whistle, you're what they're whistling at.
And then, of course,
talk about controversial. Anne Margaret was the most controversial figure of the 1960s, man.
Why do you say that?
She was a sex kitten.
Well, I just watched Carnal Knowledge again.
She was like shimmying on camera on the film. You remember the opening scene of Bye Bye Birdie? She's like cleavage out and everything, like, you know, and then she did a couple erotic films. So yeah, she was controversial, of course.
Yes, indeed. And I was just the right age at that time. So I appreciated her immensely.
Oh, I did too. When I was growing up, you know, like as a young girl, I mean, before I really knew what I was watching, I just kind of had this image of like, I want to be her. I want to kill her because she's so pretty, but I also want to like make love to her.
Right.
at the same time. And I was like, I think that's a really good way to be.
Right. Far out. And of course, the other one is a song that became more notorious later. He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss, because it was barely released. I think it was withdrawn as soon as it came out, and nobody heard it at the time, but it's kind of gained this kind of legacy around it. So why did you choose to record that?
He hit me and it felt like a kiss. He hit me, but it didn't hurt me. He couldn't stand to hear me say that I had been with someone new. And when I had told him I had been untrue, he hit me and it felt like a kiss.
I had one time, I forget where I heard the original, by the Crystals,
Yeah.
1964, 67. I forget when I heard it the first time.
Right.
But I just remember this gut wrenching feeling, because it was just the juxtaposition melodically of what was going on with the lyrics did not match. And of course, I love that kind of thing. I mean, I love that version, but I knew that if I was going to record it, I had to do it completely differently.
Yeah.
Because no one would like that. No one would, if I had that reaction, a lot of people would definitely, and then probably still people even have trouble listening to it, but that's that you're supposed to. I mean, that song, this album is not easy listening.
Right.
And that's how I intended it. And there will be other albums for that. But this song in particular I purposely put it right in the middle of the album. And to break up the two halves of what I'm talking about, and I wanted it to be like, because there's all this arrangements and strings and production, and I wanted to do it with just guitar.
Yeah.
So it could melodically break it up too.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you have, songs by Rodgers and Hammerstein and Sammy Cahn and those kind of classic American songbook writers. And then you wrap up the album with one by Amanda Palmer, who is actually living here in New Zealand.
He lives there, I know. I'm such a fan of the Dresden Dolls, man. And Brian heard my song, my version, and he hit me up, man. And we've been chatting, and it's like a dream come true. I mean, I listened to that band as a kid, and I hope to meet Amanda someday.
All the world's history gradually dying of shock. There is this thing that's like talking, except you don't talk. You sing.
Yeah, and so why do you choose "Sing" as the Dresden Dolls tune to sing?
Well, just listen to the lyrics. That's the perfect song. When I actually heard that song. I had heard it on the record, Yes, Virginia, and then but I had never given it thought to actually ever record it until about 6 years ago. I went to a drag show. Yeah, and it was all about they were doing a lot of older tunes. Some songbook and some rock songs from the 80s and 90s, where they changed it to make them about drag queen culture and gay culture.
Sure.
And for example, remember Where the Boys Are?
Oh yeah, Connie Francis.
Yeah, Connie Francis. That was a song for that person doing it. That was a song about Tinder. Or no, what's it called? Grindr.
Grindr, yeah.
And I thought that was so clever. And then they did Sing, and I said, wow, I totally didn't think of this song in this context. And I thought about, well, if I ever do an album that's about social commentary on injustices and whatever, I want to do this one. And so it was just, look at the lyrics. It approaches every kind of, political issue without making a political statement. And I thought that was a brilliant way to write a song. So
right. And you had school choir singing with you on that, right?
That was my elementary school.
Really? That's great.
I went and recorded them and directed them. It was just so special to kind of come full circle,
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. So you mentioned a little earlier that the album was recorded, you were in one stage, one page of yourself and your musical identity, and now you've kind of moved on to something else. So how have you moved on to something else?
Yeah, I mean, each album I had an idea, this idea from a very young age, maybe like 16, that I wanted each album in my adult life to really capture that time in my life. And usually so far it's been about every like 2 years is a different chapter. If you're in your 20s, like that's kind of,
Yeah.
Everything's exponentially changing and you're learning
That's true.
so much and making this transition. And so, yeah, like Confessions was like right when I graduated college, moved to New York, classic like big city move, and like the struggle between having a career as a young person and having a life in romantically and in other ways as well.
Yeah.
And that was that record. And this last record was seeing all the world change and just my reaction to it and my response. And then now that we've kind of like see the light at the end of the tunnel, we're moving on to something else. We're all focusing on healing now.
Right.
One thing that I focused on for my healing process is being in touch with not just jazz, which is such an important part. It's literally my family, my roots, like my mother and father, but also to be in touch with the other parts of who I am, and I'm kidding my audience if I don't share that with them. And I'm cheapening the experience if I don't share them my full self.
Right. So you mentioned your audience. Do you think about your audience and what they expect from you when you're choosing your songs? And
oh, of course, yeah. Not in the way of like I'm like there's a line between being too much of a people pleaser and sacrificing your own integrity, but it's so important to me that I don't not just for the audience but for me, that I don't turn away from any facet of my musical journey. My jazz music is everything. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't be grounded.
right.
It's like, it's like we all have different types of loves in our life. We have our familial loves, our siblings, if we have them, our best friends, our lovers, passionate love affairs. And for me, jazz is literally my family,
Right.
Metaphorically as well. And the passionate love affairs are opera, rock and roll, and funk and soul music and classical. So
Very cool. Now, my understanding is you have musical parents as well, so that probably helped. And you made your first album when you were 9 years old. Which is incredible just in itself. So, tell me about your musical journey from a 9-year-old recording artist to where you are now. In a few short words, you don't have to.
Sure. I mean, I wasn't like a recording artist per se. I mean, I wasn't on Disney. I wasn't on a label or anything. It was just I just loved singing with my parents, and I sang also and played trumpet in a youth jazz band.
Right.
That was my first exposure to live performance in front of people at festivals and stuff. And I just loved it. I had so much fun, and my mom thought it would be a good idea to just track the journey, which is exactly how I approach each album. I'm tracking the journey and preserving it for future. But really, the other reason why I'm happy I did it is because these albums, when I'm 9 and 11, these albums actually connect jazz to young kids in a way, because I chose songs, my mom and I chose songs that a 9-year-old could sing, like I Got Rhythm, or Everybody's Bopping, like tunes that are appropriate and get young people into jazz. So I'm glad I did them, man.
And do you still play trumpet?
Oh yeah, I'll play it eventually. I don't want to bring it on and make it a shtick, it's something special and dear to me. Yeah. Like I tap dance too, but if I started doing that, people would be like, oh yeah, it's just Sammy Davis Jr. I'm just trying to I just want to do my thing.
Very cool. I don't know if that you'd be confused with Sammy Davis Jr., but I'd love to see the tap.
He's one of my heroes though, for sure. I just can't quick draw like he can.
Right. Very cool. All right. So is there anything on the album you want to talk about? Any particular song that is important to you more than any others?
Any particular song? No, they're all equally important, I guess. I just was hoping that, I hoped that it would come across exactly as it has, which is just a reaction. It's not much. I wanted to be clear with people that I'm not the artist that's going to be an activist per se, but I do want to convey these feelings that we're all feeling together and have that be the uniting thing instead of focusing on what's keeping us apart.
Right. So you got a show coming up. Is it a one-off, or is there kind of a plan, a tour, a series of shows?
Well, I mean, it's, there's no really crazy touring or anything. It's just like I have a show in Tallahassee, and then I have show in South Carolina with a big band. I'm guest artist with them. And then I have a show on the 26th that not my show though. I'm going to be sitting in with my mom because she's singing still.
Okay.
I have a show, just here and there. Really, I probably have like 6 of my own shows this year total. Usually it'd be 6 a week, but it's I'm happy to still enjoy my time that I do have at home before it starts to get real crazy.
Has it been hard not being on stage as much as you want to? Do you have to keep your voice in shape and all that?
Oh, actually taking a break from singing is the best thing that I could, because I was working so hard and so much that I was getting, it's not the singing that makes me hoarse, it's the talking. And that's why I really don't go out and hang out after the show and do all that stuff, because my voice is literally, that's the instrument. So, and a lot of some of my band members they'd kind of make fun of me for it. I'm like, yeah, guys, well, imagine if you were, doing like crazy finger exercises all day after the show and this and that, or if you were playing trumpet like 15 hours a day or something, Yeah. So the talking is what did it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking with me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I've been lots of off time, man.
Excellent. You need to come down here, and play some shows for us.
I've been waiting.
It'll be very cool. And I think you'd go over very well. You can maybe do a show with Amanda.
Oh, that'd be a dream come true, man. If you know anyone who knows her,
everybody knows everybody here.
That's true. Yeah. And her husband, is the writer too. Like I follow her very.
He just did a show here last week, a spoken word thing. With Neil Gaiman and Lucy Lawless and herself. And it was pretty cool. So yeah.
Cool, man. It's over there.
All righty. Well, good luck with the record. Thank you for talking to me. Can't wait to see what you're up to.
Marty. Hope to meet you in person.
You too. Yeah. Well, as close as we're going to get for a while. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you. Bye-bye now.